another episode of Ball Over Passion. I am your boy at George V underscore AFC, and we are back with another video. It's the big one. It's the review of Chelsea. What a game! I couldn't get it live, but when you have a rewatch of it, it was one of the more exciting performances of the entire season. And I think looking back on it, it was just such a dominant display. And so I can't wait to get into some of the tactics of this all. There was a lot of really notable performances. I'm looking at Thomas Partey, who had an absolute monster class in the middle of the park. Then you've got William Saliba, who was just an absolute dominant force. For me, somebody that kind of struggled a little bit in past matches, defensively, but has really come in and had a really landmark performance here. And of course, Ben White, another supreme performance. And, Zinchenko had a really interesting role. I think coming back from injury, he did himself no harms. There was a lot of really good stuff. I think he did tire towards the end of the second half, and we did well to kind of do a good sub with Kieran Tierney afterwards. But there was a lot of just really good performances here. And I think, if you're a Chelsea fan, you would be absolutely pissed off because the 1-0 kind of score line really flattered Chelsea. One of our more dominant in possession displays, really mature performance. And, I don't really remember a time that I was distinctly nervous about a Chelsea attack or a Chelsea counter in any sense. And, we just, from the off, made sure that we were meeting their markers really well. And I think that Chelsea's failed press kind of in the middle of the park was the biggest storyline to this entire game. And, looking back at it, I think the initial lineup coming out, Zinchenko, what he offers kind of in the middle of the park, a lot of people were excited in case somebody did a man marking job kind of on Thomas Partey. But, I really think Graham Potter messed up with a lot of very basic tactical decisions, going to a back four, not putting a 1v1 man marking job on Thomas Partey, killed them. And, the entry pass from Thomas Partey into Martin Odegaard was just something to behold. So, I think in general, this is just a performance that at least, rival fans and narrative are going to love because, it basically puts yourself up at the top. In terms of the Premier League, we're back where we belong. And, with a performance that I think a lot of rivals will take note of, particularly with the fact that it is such a big rival. But we're going to get into it. I'm excited to get into it. Firstly, I'm going to say hi to Curran, mate. Curran, how you doing? You good, mate?
I am good. I will be with you in literally like 2 minutes. It's just little something's going on with the internet here, but I will be with you in a minute. Everything's good, really good game, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it. But just give me a second, and I'll be right with you.
No worries, no worries. And so I hope everyone's doing well in the comments. But guys, you know what? In the meantime, we're going to get into it. So, we've got a lot to discuss. And, I think the first thing that we've got to start with is, we'll start with Chelsea's failed press, because I think that was really the story of kind of today and, or not today, but yesterday rather. And this is kind of what Arsenal had a lot of really good joy in. And we really went man to man press. It was so aggressive. And, going at Stamford Bridge, you now make it 3 for 3 since 2018. I don't think that Arsenal have lost against Chelsea kind of in the league for about 5 years almost. It's been a crazy statistic. It's again 3 for 3 at Stamford Bridge, and kind of going into how we managed to seal this, it was really clear that going into the game, look, Chelsea had injuries. No one's going to sit there and say that they didn't. Reece James would have been an immense play on the right hand side, and really the fact that Aspilicueta was really struggling down that side meant a lot, because I felt that there was a big disconnect between the front three and Chelsea's kind of back six, seven. And it really stemmed from the fact that I think their front three offensive distances were just so off. And so when we get into it, I'll probably show up a little bit of a graph here that we've got. And so it can kind of display some of the reasons why Chelsea really found it difficult to kind of get out of play. So, William Saliba had just a landmark performance, and really Aubameyang and Kai Havertz weren't doing a very good job in terms of making sure to track off space runners. And so there was a lot of 1v1 battles happening here, but really Aubameyang was very loose in making sure to mark out Zinchenko. And of course, that battle with Sterling and Zinchenko was just a really one-sided affair. And, I think Zinchenko rocked out with something like one of the more number of interceptions in the game. He really did well in a counter-attacking sense, and he found a lot of space between the lines. What Chelsea tried to do by going with the back four was that they wanted their fullbacks to be really aggressive to our wingers. So Cucurella immediately was hitting Saka off the bat. And of course, Aspilicueta was on to Martinelli. And in the middle of the park, they wanted Ruben Loftus-Cheek to be on Granit Xhaka, and Martin Odegaard was marked by Jorginho. And, Mason Mount did a little bit of a better job than Sterling on his Zinchenko marker, but that Mount versus White battle was something that, we'll really see come to the fore because Ben White got the better of Mason Mount quite a bit, but really it was Kai Havertz having a horrible job in blocking the entry pass into Thomas Partey. So what we see here is, William Saliba had a lot of really good opportunities to find Thomas Partey quick and early. And that kind of passage of play between Zinchenko and Thomas Partey, that little triangle there, offered so many release valves because the front two of Chelsea weren't very diligent in terms of their markers. They weren't doing very good in the press, and they kind of gave a lot of space. And so what typically would happen is with Thomas Partey kind of being marked by Kai Havertz or, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, one of the two, Zinchenko would add in to kind of be a secondary receiver in the middle of the park. And we see this 3-2-5. It's something that we know very well, kind of if you're a big fan of the channel, we talk about this quite a bit. But, Zinchenko offering himself in midfield kind of offered a secondary receiver for the back line to get out. And Gabriel Magalhaes had a very good game, and he was able to really find Martinelli wide when Zinchenko would float in the middle of the park and Sterling wouldn't pick him up. And so this kind of meant that our buildup was really fluid. We were able to find passes early in the middle of the park, and just the space between Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Jorginho, who were marking Martin Odegaard and Granit Xhaka, was too big in comparison to the front four. And really what we just saw were early passes into Thomas Partey, early passes into Zinchenko. And what ended up happening was that you were bypassing their press. And so ultimately, you kind of had this happen where Jesus was absolutely pushing their back line back. And, Granit Xhaka and Martin Odegaard were staying a little bit higher. And, I think it would be really frustrating from Chelsea's perspective why there wasn't more athleticism. I would be looking at Conor Gallagher doing a much better job than Ruben Loftus-Cheek in the role, or at least putting Ruben Loftus-Cheek on Martin Odegaard and having Conor Gallagher on Granit Xhaka, just so that you have a little bit more legs to kind of meet those markers, because they weren't able to handle Arsenal's buildup. It was excellent, and it wasn't just Zinchenko. It really was Thomas Partey, who had an excellent game. Ben White, phenomenal game. And of course, William Saliba was just instrumental in making sure to find these passes really quick. But what we really did kind of, off the ball to really stifle Chelsea was this is kind of our buildup. But then we look at our press, and our press is very similar kind of to before. And we'd adopted a little bit more of a 4-4-2 press during this point in time. And, our fullbacks were just super aggressive to their opposition wingers. And what Chelsea love to do is they love to basically add one center midfielder, one fullback, and one winger to combine really quickly and offer an entry pass into midfield. But you can see here, just right off the bat, our press is extremely man-to-man. It's extremely aggressive. Bukayo Saka is on to Cucurella really quick, but it's Ben White who is there before Mason Mount can receive the ball. And that is the key to this, with Martin Odegaard making sure that he's cutting off the center pass into the middle of the park. This meant that Chelsea had no option but to recycle the ball back, and it was often met with, kind of Edouard Mendy going long very, very often. And so generally, though, when we found the ball kind of in the middle of the park, Chelsea would kind of recycle at the back, and you had this general 4-4-2 structure where Martin Odegaard would join Gabriel Jesus in the front two, but blocking entry into Jorginho. And you can see Jorginho trying to look for spaces. But, Bukayo Saka and Martinelli, I want to draw your attentions here. This is a very narrow 4-4-2. And part of the issue is because Chelsea like to spread the pitch really wide, but then they like to find space on the inside. And what we did to really block it was really evident was Bukayo Saka and Martinelli were cheating kind of on their markers, and really were making sure that there was no entry pass in the middle of the park here. And there was nobody that was offering a secondary solution. Mason Mount, who you can see kind of just on the edge of your screen, that's being watched by Thomas Partey. But Bukayo Saka is so close to the inside that there is no good pass for Chelsea, and there's no out ball. And so what they struggled to do was to find anybody on the inside. And what just ended up happening was they kept going around the back in a very U-shaped pattern that, if you were a Wenger fan, you would have become accustomed to kind of towards the end. And so when you start to kind of look at it, this man marking job, it just kept going throughout the half. And, what happened was Gabriel Jesus was absolutely pressuring the ball back. But, again, Bukayo Saka was so tight to the opposition winger or to Cucurella, depending on whoever was near the inside channel. And we allowed them to have space out wide because we trusted our athletes, and we just became super compact in the middle of the park, and we denied any kind of space. And, fundamentally, when we did end up getting the ball and we ended up having that build-up structure, a big part of it was Zinchenko offering himself between the lines. And so, as you can see here, there's just zero effort from Chelsea's front three in this kind of position. With Kai Havertz is nowhere near Thomas Partey. He needs to be far closer. Aubameyang, we know what he's like, but he just wasn't really good at pressuring. And what we ended up seeing was actually Aaron Ramsdale, which you can see in this shot, joining to become part of the back four. And what this allowed was basically to have a Zinchenko in the middle of the park, but it gave us a 5v4 basically in every single scenario, because what you have is, William Saliba is out of your screen here, but you've got William Saliba, Ben White, which you see at the corner of the picture, and Ramsdale and Gabriel made the back four. And then inside in the two, you've got Thomas Partey and Zinchenko. But Zinchenko is in so much space, and with a really smart pass by Aaron Ramsdale, you cut this press, and immediately you're left in so much space. And we constantly found Martin Odegaard with really quick passes to bypass this Jorginho route, which he was really, really poor on the day and not able to respond quickly whatsoever. And so when we do this, we're out within 3 passes. We've transitioned on Chelsea, and it was beautiful to see. We kind of did this all game, and not just was it Zinchenko finding Martin Odegaard really quick. It was also Thomas Partey. He was just having an unbelievable game, and he was constantly able to find passes out wide both to Ben White, but also finding Odegaard really quick and easy with really tight buildup. And so when Chelsea would try to find it, an opportunity to squeeze us in the wide areas, Thomas Partey was just phenomenal, making sure to find Martin Odegaard really quick and early so that he could spin. And then beyond that, Chelsea's line was just really poor in terms of their spacing. They weren't tight to Martin Odegaard. There's no one there marking him, and this was a really common interest. And so I'll go back to kind of the main tactical view here, which is why I've kind of highlighted the Thomas Partey arrow, because you can really see that kind of Jorginho Odegaard corridor was super important in making sure that we had a lot of space to exploit. Because once Martin Odegaard found himself in that position, we broke at pace, and we were able to really get in behind that Chelsea midfield line and their back line, and we really caused havoc. But first, I want to give a chance for Curran. So that was kind of the general overview of what we saw with both press and the build-up. But mate, how did you find kind of the general play? Because we really dominated proceedings in this game.
Yeah, I mean, look, the main thing in terms of build-up, in terms of getting the ball through the lines and getting the ball up the pitch. Obviously, Partey is the main fulcrum for getting the ball into good areas. But I think for me, it's the ability to basically have that structure and have Gabriel shoot wide and bring in Zinchenko inside. You always will have, no matter where we go with this build up, you always have that sort of security on both sides of the pitch. Obviously, Partey kind of moving a bit more to the right to find Odegaard in that sort of just on the halfway line on the right hand side, whereas Zinchenko can combine either with Xhaka, who would peel a bit left, Marcelli would drop sometimes, Gabriel would shoot up, but the point is there was always a man available, and I know we both wanted Tierney, and I would have preferred Tierney, to be honest. I thought maybe they'd be a bit more ruthless in terms of coming at us a bit more, but they just weren't. They they were kind of toothless. And the one thing I did want to point out, what we did mention in the preview, is that we were saying about how the wide channels would be the where this game was won, and I think that was the case in this game, because we, on both sides, both fullbacks and both wingers, were able to stop transitions from their side, and the one time they got out, they had a good chance, which
Yeah, and it's true. Like the one time that they had kind of that
against
one
Wing.
chance. Yeah, like the one time that they had a chance to really get through, they just weren't able
Was it me
to
or you?
find space. And what really happened is, I think it was really coming down to the fact that there was no space in the middle of the park. Sorry, are you back? You were transforming, so I thought I'd go.
Did I go or did you go? I
You
win. Yeah, okay. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, yeah, the main point I was trying to make was the wide channels were where this game was going to be won, and yeah, it was interesting. It was really interesting to see Zinchenko. Obviously, you mentioned his scanning. I did not. Don't worry, as you just saw, it was a a transformery event that had just happened. So hopefully we're good. But the main thing is the channels in the game. The game was one wide, and the game was spread um, in a position where Chelsea couldn't cope. And I was watching Tifo earlier, and Tifo were mentioning the box midfield that Potter tried to implement, and tried to basically move it to ones to move the box to either side to try and create an overload. I just think that their ability to look at how they can avoid basically evade the press and get out of their thing, but they weren't allowed to. We on every line, whenever they went to, and there will be a Jesus section, don't worry. The main thing is Xhaka and Jorginho and Odegaard on Ruben and Jorginho were always coming. And then if they got past, Zinchenko would back up straight away. Partey would back up straight away. White would come in. And there was one thing I took. I think the main thing is for me is whenever they tried to clear, and they tried to clear wide because they wanted to hit their runners, Zinchenko would be there. He'd be there to hit his marker, or White would be there to hit his marker as well.
No, absolutely. And I agree. Like I saw that Tifo video, but for me, like, so the box, you can kind of see like it's a little bit of a staggered box here, because this is kind of the reality, right? Like when the ball was on the right hand side, Mason Mount was really aggressive to the wide channel. But look, if it was on the left, Sterling ideally had to be super aggressive towards Zinchenko, right? And the box would just shift. But really, the box is your Ruben Loftus-Cheek, your Jorginho deep, and then your Sterling and Mount, which is their wingers, would come really narrow inside, and then they kind of worked their top two to really be aggressive, kind of front two pressers, but they just weren't. And really what it came down to was Sterling, Aubameyang, and Havertz not having enough intensity in terms of meeting the markers, because the idea was to basically match up man for man, and that really didn't happen. And from an Arsenal perspective, how we responded was really we did this more 4-4-2, which I found super interesting, because look, when we were deep in their half, we went man to man. It was super aggressive, and it's something that we've seen all season. This is not new for us. We know that our fullbacks are super aggressive in wide spaces. We meet their wide wingers very quickly. This is Ben White in this instance, and of course, Bukayo Saka is marking up Cucurella. And here you can see it's very clear. It's man v man. Martin Odegaard stopping that entry pass into Jorginho. Jesus is blocking the center back option, and of course, Cucurella has only one option to really find Mason Mount. And Ben White doesn't give him an opportunity to turn. But when they did get out, and kind of they were able to get out of that first phase, what we did super well was making sure to box the box. And so when Chico was trying to talk about kind of having two people to be able to receive, we were so narrow in our approach, right? We have the front two and Odegaard and Jesus there, but look at kind of how tight Martinelli and Saka are. This is a change to kind of past defending, really, because they're usually much wider to meet the fullbacks. And what I think this said, Curran, by the way, which I didn't hear from Tifo, is we did something pretty brave. We basically said, let your fullbacks create, which we know they can't. And so that was really the issue, because they really felt that Cucurella didn't offer enough of an offensive threat in this position. And they knew that Mason Mount was really the danger man, and so were Raheem Sterling, right? So when you had Azpilicueta and Cucurella out wide, they didn't offer the width that we know Chelsea can have. And so really, Graham Potter's system would have been a lot better, of course, with the Reece James providing that outlet. I think this game is very different.
I think the whole game changes. Our game plan changes as well. And just to reiterate, like I've got a perfect example here. So Mount, he tries to clear, and then Sterling is found, but look who's there. Zinchenko's there to stop the transition and get the ball back. And this is what we were doing so well. We were able to just recycle possession. We weren't allowing them to just get into transition and hit their runners, which honestly, with Aubameyang with 8 touches on the pitch, 2 of them clearances and 1 of them from kickoff, it's just sort of like we didn't allow him space, we didn't allow him time, and this was the main issue for them. They couldn't hit their runners in transition, because the one time they did, it kind of turned into a chance. Look at Mendy here. Mendy clears, he clips the ball wide. Sterling receives it wide and tries to progress the play. And look, Zinchenko's tracking back in transition, but you can see that Havertz runs inside him and he does create something, but the cross is poor and there's mountain space and Aubameyang waiting for it, and he just misses everyone. So when you see these kinds of opportunities arise, there wasn't a route for them to get out. It's just they weren't able to hit their men in transition because we were so good at recycling the play. And even when if you look at the situation with the cross, yes, mounts in space, but there's no overload. It's a 4v3, and their mounts arriving, yes, sure, but you have Saliba on and Gabriel who are ready for the cutback, and Partey ready to move if there's a cross coming. So
It's
it's
just
not like we were,
it's so
yeah,
poor. It's so poor occurring because I think for me, like when you see this in the beginning moments, guys, and this is taken from the first couple minutes of the play, I immediately knew,
yeah,
okay, Arsenal are on job. And it's not like there was a question whether we weren't, but this is like the home team playing. Like they were playing like the away side, and it was just very strange. And for me, like you said, I think we knew that without kind of Reece James or Chilwell, there wasn't that wide threat. Like that is absolutely true. And so, really, what happened was they were instructed to kind of cheat on the inside, block any center passes, because the only way that they can hurt us is if they can receive centrally, i.e., Mount, if he can receive centrally, or Ruben Loftus Cheek, if they can turn and run at us, there will be some issues. But really, we asked Martinelli and Saka to kind of cheat on the inside so that they felt like they couldn't. And at every point in time, there was a man marking job on every interior player. And the few times that kind of Chelsea recycled the ball out wide, Saka was making sure to kind of drop deep in any kind of interior because, again, this is Mason Mount here, who is dropping extremely deep, recognizing that Jorginho and Ruben Loftus-Cheek have no ability to kind of receive the ball. Now, I really want to
no,
point everybody's eyes towards Granit Xhaka, who right now is with Ruben Loftus-Cheek, but he is telling Gabriel Martinelli to immediately push and cheat. And what he's doing is he's saying, I want you to push towards Aspilicueta, who's dropped kind of deep in the center back role, so that when the ball is recycled, we don't have to change too much. And this is just super important, right, guys? Because when kind of Thiago is in this position right now, and Gabby Jesus is forcing him to recycle the ball, if Martinelli is kind of up top and he's already forming part of the front two, Zinchenko would have been super aggressive towards Chalobah on the opposite side, and this just pins Chelsea in. And it's kind of like a case of our really good friend Rohan on Twitter who goes, when X moves, Y moves, right? And, Granit Xhaka is already doing this right now, kind of ordering Martinelli to anticipate the fact that they can't get out. They realize that Bukayo Saka is covered in here, and Mount is already pointing to switch to the opposite side here,
I
right?
mean,
And this,
the thinking is Cucurella is going to push, and that will be the fifth channel, and you'll
yeah,
basically form Aspilicueta come inside, and basically have the pivot be the two, have your Aspi be the third centre back, and have that 3-2-5 go. And I think what their problem was is they couldn't push Cucurella up
no.
because they were too worried about Bukayo. That constantly you could see Cucurella trying to come up, but then thinking, "Oh crap, I've got to track, I've got to watch myself because Bukhaya's on me." And this was the
Yeah.
main problem they were having. They couldn't really, take the game by the scruff of the neck because they couldn't, firstly, get out in the first phase because we had markers on their midfield, and secondly, couldn't distribute the ball wide because either Sterling was coming too deep and didn't have options, which was more prevalent in the second half, or Cucurella was too worried about Bukayo to really, be that aggressive fifth channel that something like a Kieran Tierney would do. He just wasn't able to do that. So when you have both of those, you're kind of trapped. And this is what happened to them. They kept getting to like 30 yards up, 40 yards up, and they're just going, okay, what now? And
Well,
then they would just get the ball nicked back.
Well, exactly that, and then in the few times that they were able to force you back, and I think Ramsdale was just so important. I mean, the fact that he's joining the back four again, it's extremely aggressive, guys. Like this is away at a top six rival, and that front three needs to do better. Like Sterling has to be on Gabriel a lot quicker. Kai Havertz has to be up, but guys, who is supporting that front three? Like Zinchenko, of course, he's offering himself. He's doing a really good job being between the lines, and he did that quite often. He was definitely available for us in the first phase to kind of receive off either Aaron Ramsdale or one of the first center backs, right? Like we talked about kind of just earlier. I'll go back to that graphic where if William Saliba's in possession, he's constantly got two out balls, whether it's Thomas Partey or Zinchenko, right? But the issue that I've got here from a Chelsea perspective is who is high and wide up onto Zinchenko's back? No one. There's an enormous amount of space here. And in one pass, Aaron Ramsdale finds Zinchenko and boom, he's broken. And right now, Jorginho is too flat-footed. He realizes that Martin Odegaard is really the out ball, and it's too late. Okay, and then by this point, Zinchenko's gone, and what we do find kind of in the next phase of play here is Ben White is in acres of space in the back line, and when you find Ben White in this position, which he was so often, there is zero pressure on him. Cucurella, and there's no one within 5 to 10 yards of him, and that's a problem. That is a problem from a Chelsea perspective. And so I think the one thing before we get into kind of the first half, and I'll let you kind of do your little screenshots, Curran. I found
Mhm.
this ridiculous from an opposition perspective that we were very good. Let's not put that away. But Chelsea were poor, so poor. Their midfield were weak. They were meager. They were afraid. They weren't going in. Mason Mount here is trying to cover back, and he's just out of position. And they're asking so much of Mason Mount to cover between whether it was here, whether it was making sure to receive as an out ball. Mason Mount was their unicorn that they were hoping to continuously find and get them out of trouble, which they just couldn't do. And then ultimately, what happened was when they did pin us in and they did do a good job at kind of creating a numerical superiority wide by Kai Havertz actually tracking back here, Partey was just phenomenal. He was world class at finding early balls into Martin Odegaard, and that was a theme of this entire game. That Thomas Partey was phenomenal, but so was Zinchenko. And the early pass, whether it was this to Martin Odegaard or in this position, finding Martin Odegaard with a quick switch from right to left, or from left to right rather, it just opened the entire area of the pitch so often. And you ended up kind of having this scenario with Ben White just in space consistently. And he could pick his pass. He could offer an overlap. You could wait for Martin to kind of drag in deep with markers. The one thing I will say is in this position, I really want to see Gabriel Jesus making more of a banana run in between Chalaba. Don't ask for the outside run. So this is the one time that I feel as though Gabriel Jesus, I love that he's in the box at this moment in time, but we need to see that peeled run in between Chalaba and in behind Jorginho, because Martinelli can make that run. He's there. He's right behind you. So one of the two needs to make a darting central run to draw away a marker, right? And then Chalaba will leave. And so ideally, if Gabriel Jesus wants to stay there because he's in that position and make a back post run, Martinelli just needs to find that kind, or recognize that space and make a darting run in between Trevor Chalaba and in behind Jorginho, just to kind of raise a marker there, right, and offer a chance for Gabriel Jesus to have some space. But this was just really clear throughout the entirety of the game that Chelsea struggled to build wide. They had no width, and they were blocked from any central progression by Arsenal's excellent press. And again, it's the MVP of the season. It's what we've been saying kind of all season here on BoP, but this was just a dominant way in how we actually tweak some things, right, Curran? Like for me, we normally do 1-2 press, but we didn't. We had much more of a 4-4-2. It was a narrow 4-4-2. And again, maybe that's a geek thing for me to say, but like it was a tweak that worked wonders. And in addition, when you had a look at kind of some of our build-up patterns, I think Thomas Partey, you can't not go beyond that boy, because I think for me, he had a world-class performance along with William Saliba. Those two, the amount of passes that they were making in build-up, it was easy, but they played excellently to it as well. But mate, I think it's been almost 30 minutes in, and that's kind of the breakdown of kind of build up and on and off the ball. But I'll let you kind of do.
We're done with George's boring build up and pressing stuff. We're into because the thing is, I watched this game and I messaged George. I was like, bro, I don't know what to screenshot. It seems like everything is just like kind of the same. 2-3-5, 4-4-2 pressing shape. It was kind of the peak Mikel performance. I feel like it was like control, death by 1,000 passes. The rotations were great. Like everything you kind of want from. So I was like, why don't we find some fun things that he's done? Because there's fun things in this game, like these Partey long throws. Like I've never like this is a new thing this season. He started doing it. I think it's fun. I think we've got some aerial monsters in the box. I think this is cool. And look, you can see the setup. Obviously, I think this is a Yova thing that he's implemented with Xhaka and Gabriel at the front post. And I want to see one come off. I'm not going to lie to you. So, but yeah, I wanted to find some things that were interesting, that were fun, and that was one of them. I think one of them obviously was the build up for that Jesus miss. And before we do, because we are going to have a Jesus section, there's just this Jesus miss is just mental, because the build up was crazy. I mean, you know the one I mean, George. What did you make of that one before I load it up?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was an excellent piece of build-up play, right? Like the one thing that I'll say is that there was a lot of innovation in terms of the way that Arsenal were building up in this match. I think that there was a lot of 1-2 touch plays, and this was probably like the peak of it, right? Like when you have a
Mhm.
look kind of at what was really great about it was we didn't really do that slow, methodical build up in that instance. It was actually really quite quick with Saliba firing a really quick ball into Martin Odegaard. And again, I'm repeating myself on the podcast, but guys, we tried to find Martin Odegaard super quick in all of our best bits of play.
Yeah.
And I think that was really, really important because when it was able to kind of manipulate Chelsea's really narrow distances because they didn't
Ooh,
have enough distance between their midfield and their front three, right? So
that reminds me. There was the thing with Martin was his ability to drift wide and central. That was his, I think, his superpower in this game. He was able to drift wide and build up and sort of provide that option for Thomas either out wide, but he also came inside. He wasn't afraid to sort of drift in and out of zones and build up, which was very, very good, I think, this game. Sometimes, he likes to just be that sort of center on the center line, wide, and then drift inside and then pick it up. But this time he was coming a bit deeper. He was going a bit forward. He wasn't afraid to leave space from the ball. I think he was very, very good in terms of the zones he was occupying to not sort of hinder the build up, but keep the tempo, pushing the tempo. But yes, let's get into this because,
well, let's get into it because I
yeah,
think, look, ultimately, what this is all about is really it's the innovative play, but it's William Saliba. It's how calm he is in and out of possession. Okay, his skill set makes everything so serene, and even from a high press, he's not phased. And so, look,
no,
Thomas Partey makes an excellent recovery over here, and then of course you have the quick layoff into Ben White, right? And Ben White has a touch of class with that little back heel off to Saliba again. But then Saliba is so quick to kind of understand from this position, the out ball is high up the pitch. We don't need it. There's a high press. There's a lot of people in the back. He then manages to find a really quick play out to Martin Odegaard, who then just lays it off to Thomas Partey, and boom, we're out. And in this position of play, you can already see most of Chelsea is out of the picture right now. And Thomas Partey fires off a great pass off to Granit Xhaka, who is off to the races. And boom, he is in space. And then when you're isolated kind of with Martinelli out wide there, he's got a beautiful cross. And look, Gabriel Jesus, which is time to maybe talk about this because it's a beautiful run. It's an unbelievable run. And the miss is poor. I mean, there's not much that you can
that
say.
still says it all, doesn't it? That's
It does. It does. Like it is so poor. But one thing I will say is this chance forced Chelsea's line to be so back and so deep. Okay. His movement and this scare is really what created the space. So the entirety of the podcast, we've talked about kind of how the press was really disjointed by Chelsea. We talked how the back line and their midfield line weren't aggressive to their front line. There was a lot of space. And Arsenal did well to find balls into Martin Odegaard really quick. But I think that was really because Gabriel Jesus in this match, which is going to be the section, I want to give you a chance, Curran, after this. But
Mhm.
Gabriel Jesus, he wasn't deep. And it was very purpose that I had him high in this graphic. Because for me, he didn't drop as deep in this game. He was much higher up the pitch and he was making sure to make off the ball runs. And it was making Thiago Chalobah, Cucurella, and Aspi, the back four, have a much deeper line because they were very worried about his off the ball movement. And they kind of trusted for Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Jorginho to win that midfield battle, which they didn't do. And we were able to find Martin Odegaard super quick. Or if Zinchenko was found here, he would find Granit Xhaka vertically very, very quick. And so these two things meant that Gabriel Jesus didn't have to drop deep into play. He was able to play off the shoulder of the back line. And this is where he's dangerous. And so while the miss was horrible and it was really poor and he should have done better just to get it on target, we know all of these things. But this movement, you don't get Chelsea's back line so deep if he isn't there making that movement. And what you don't get is Zinchenko in this amount of space because the back line is so worried about Jesus being so high that they don't feel like they can comfortably press Zinchenko in this position. And you don't get an opportunity to kind of rip Chelsea kind of on the counter attack here. And this is really the fundamental joy of it all because again, Gabriel Jesus is high in this position. It's a change from previous games. I think he's been dropping far too deep in previous games. And I think I love that this game he was much higher on the pitch. He was focusing on Chalobah or Aspi and making those runs, making sure that Chelsea's defense line wasn't high and they didn't feel comfortable doing it. So I think it was excellent. And, of course, you needed to have kind of our technicians in the back had a really good game so that Jesus doesn't drop deep. But Curran, what did you make of Zinchenko definitely being a lot higher in this game and kind of the effect it had on Chelsea's back line?
I mean, I think you mean Jesus, but yeah,
Yeah.
with Jesus, it was sort of like the the main thing with Jesus. I feel like what he's brought to this team is a wanting to harry players,
Yeah.
not just in the press, but I feel like the tactical fouls, his ability to just sort of harry and rush players. I feel like that it's kind of rubbed off on the whole team. Like you look at Erdegaard making tactical fouls, which I didn't really see in previous games. I've got it here somewhere. Um, like you've got him here on Jorginho, and then he's making tactical fouls on him as well. I mean, it's here somewhere. Here it is. Like you can see him, like he's basically just trying to get the ball back. He's willing to make these sort of fouls now, and I feel like it's not just because he's it's not just him. Ben White, obviously, the master of the dark arts of our club. I think he's really brought a sort of rushy feeling to this to the team in terms of the front line and the midfield. Everyone just wants to sort of push up, push up, push up. Do not let them have the ball. The fullbacks are willing to win the ball a lot more in transition. I think that was Zinchenko's screenshot I was showing earlier, and this is all kind of rubbing off from Jesus. I feel like he's brought this sort of culture to the club where we're gonna be in your faces. We're
Well,
not gonna let you get the ball through the lines. We're going to be the aggressors here. And I
well,
don't think there's been one team that's come or we've gone to and that we've thought, okay, no, we have to sit back and this is we've gone at teams. We've gone at teams and really try to push the tempo, get in their faces and be aggressive.
absolutely. And look, Jesus does something else, guys, because again, going into the kind of the goal now as well, because we still haven't talked about it. But like
Yeah.
Jesus is integral to getting a position in the set piece, right? So at the very beginning, Jesus does excellent work in making sure to kind of start kind of the recovery tackle. And from that point in time, Bukayo Saka is able to get on his bike and run, and he forces the error. And then when Jesus is able to kind of turn and receive, look, I don't think he does much wrong in this position. It's very difficult. I think some people may want a cutback, but even then, Chelsea do defend this well. And I think Jesus does the right thing. He goes high and wide. The angle's not there. So he does well in this position. But I mean, it all comes from Jesus's endeavor at the beginning to put pressure in the first phase of Chelsea's buildup, not allowing any kind of turn from whether it's Ruben Loftus Cheek, whether it was Jorginho receiving. He was constantly on the first receiver, not giving them time and space. And without Jesus being able to do that over here, I don't think that you get the chance. Well, actually, I know you don't get the chance. And it
I
leads to
mean, it was a great battle the entire game. Like
yeah,
Silva and Jesus, like credit to Thiago Silva. This block
yeah.
was amazing, and he proved that even at 38 years old, he's still Thiago Silva. He's still someone. Look, he's still someone that can do a job in a back three or a back two. I think a lot of doubts have come over this. Can he do it in a back two? He showed yesterday that he was pretty decent. It's just I feel like he's surrounded by players, especially his midfield, who can't progress the ball in tight spaces and get it into areas that you can really progress. And the balance of that team is just not right. But Jesus himself, I think his ability to rush the play and rush, I'm going to keep emphasizing this, rushing the play, being able to progress the ball through wide areas well. Notice that his ability to go both left and right and create those wide overloads that we have succeeded with over the time. You look at that Ben White chance, which I think we haven't looked at. Um, that there's he comes across, Martinelli receives the ball, and Jesus is the one inside who rolls the ball across for Ben White, who shoots. I think that's it's really interesting to see how we can have a player that is our centre forward be the one running wide either side to create chances. And it's not just like he's not doing it. He's got 5 assists this season. He's up there. He's doing what he's meant to do it for the club. And I think obviously the goals are an issue. And even I found myself during the game, I was like, "Ah, I need a centre forward. I want a proper goal, someone who can get us a goal. But at the end of the day, in these big games, you need to be able to be in the opposition's face. You need to be able to ride tough periods and then make sure that they are feeling your presence there. And that's what he does. He makes sure that you cannot have a minute off. You can't take a second off because if you do, he's there, willing to get in behind, willing to basically take the ball off you and get in behind himself or create for someone else. And that's an incredible asset to have, and that's what he's been doing.
No, absolutely, and, I think a lot of the debate about Gabriel Jesus is gonna come from if he stops running, then that is very fine for you to critique him, but I think that's just not the case, and it shows that, he's just so busy. If you look at all of his touch maps, by the way, too, or well, not all of them, but at least the one in this game, he had something like 62 touches. They're all over the place, and,
Yep.
he's what allows us to really keep the pressure in a pressing sense, and that is the MVP of this season. I'm sorry, guys, like, if you're gonna look at the improvement from Arsenal from last season to this season. It has to be the press. It's why I keep talking about it on BoP. It's why, I keep saying, look, guys, I think everybody needs to take a look at some of the tactical things that we did different in
Mm.
this game because they were different. And I think I would encourage people to rewatch because if you're not doing well in the press, Arsenal will not succeed and we won't have a very good game. That is the biggest difference. Would I like him to score more goals and be more clinical? Sure. But I sat here on BoP in the summer and I did say, look, don't expect Gabriel Jesus to be a super clinical striker. He underperforms his XG his entire career.
Consistently.
It's not something that he does, right? And he's somebody that does produce fairly decent shot numbers per 90. It's something like almost he averages 3 shots per 90. If he is given enough game time, right? And those are very decent shot numbers. But the fact is, he's just not clinical, and that's fine as
But
long as
what he
he's
does bring,
continuing. As long as he's continuing, sorry, to give you that off the ball
yeah,
movement, because a striker that moves tests the defensive back line, and it doesn't allow your opposition's line to be high. One of the big reasons
yeah,
that Arsenal have had so much success is because of our defensive line height. Everybody knows it's the second best in the league, second highest behind Manchester City, which I'd arguably it's probably very similar at this point.
yeah.
If
I
you
know,
really
but
were to
what I
look
was
at,
gonna say, is in big games you want Gabriel Jesus.
yeah,
In big games, because what big games bring? Big games bring, the they're won in moments, and Gabriel Jesus is someone that can create moments. He's someone that is able to basically produce mistakes, and that's what he's there for. And notice that you have Martinelli and Saka, who are both hitting their best seasons, and it's not just because they're given that star role. They're given that star role, and they have someone to take away pressure from them because the wide overloads, as we mentioned, as the running into the box, as we mentioned, as the chance creation through turnovers, as we've mentioned. These are all things that are very, very high XG producing capable actions. These can produce very good chances.
yeah, and well, speaking of that, Curran, like, why don't we have a look at kind of the XG? So these are like the running totals of the XG map, and so basically, since the 15th minute, you can kind of see Arsenal just take control. And it really wasn't clear, or close rather, not clear, but it's really clear, and it wasn't close about how dominant
There we go.
Arsenal performance was. And even looking at my now favorite Arsenal metric in terms of the field tilt, look, there was like a 10 to 15 minute period kind of in the first half that Chelsea definitely had a little bit of an opportunity to kind of explore. But really, Arsenal dominated this match. And it really came down to a couple special key performers. And so for me, the big one was definitely Thomas Partey. We've kind of talked about him really
Mhm.
finding Martin Odegaard in space really quickly. William Saliba, landmark performance for me. One of the ones that he really struggled. There was that one run late in the second half that he's basically at right back. And guys, I would encourage everybody to go back. I can't be on the exact minute, but he's back in the right back position and he fakes a shot and is able to make a cross deep. And this is
It's
something
around
that,
the 70th minute. I remember.
yeah,
Heard it. I rewatched before, but it's the ability because people forget that he played at right back at Marseille as well. That
yeah,
right centre back, right back. The chaos ball they used to play at Marseille last season. But what Saliba brings is a progressive monster. Whether it's carrying, passing, he's just that guy. He's got that ability to get the ball and pass it through the lines with efficiency, as well as being that dual monster that can win, that can basically shove people off the ball, get you off your balance, make sure that you can win the duels. But another thing that it brings is that ability, as you mentioned, to shift that line a bit higher because of that recovery pace that he possesses. Not many people can keep up with Mbappe. It's not a thing that is regular. That's not a regular occurrence.
yeah.
And to take him out 1v1 is not a regular thing. That doesn't happen every day. Killian is Killian. He's a demon. He knows what he's doing, and to take him out that it should have shown people this isn't a regular talent. This is the best under 21 centre back I would say in the world. Is not It's not something we say lightly. He is that guy. He will be that guy, and he's going to be that guy for years to come. So get used to it. He is just going to be moving from pillar to post. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, no, there isn't, and I think it comes down to, for me, like you can just see how dominant of a performance this was, just back to front. There's a lot of really top performers. I kind of wanted to ask you, Curran, because I've talked about my favorites, but who for you stood out kind of in this match?
Ben,
Ben,
Ben.
Ben.
I mean, the way he took out Mason. Mason was the guy who people were getting on. They're thinking, okay, he's due a big performance, and they're not really producing that kind of. I think what's their biggest goal and assist tally is 3 or 4 or something like this. Mason has that ability to just, he's got that ability, that wow factor. He can take a ball. He's playing in the 8 role. He's not playing out wide. He's playing centrally. Could he do something? And he just took him out.
Yeah.
Clipping his heels, he kept he kept harrying and hustling him. There was nothing you could do. There was nothing you could do. And that ability, as you mentioned, to find space in the midfield, the transition control that he was able to provide, the ability to provide an overlap if Saka wanted it. It's just there. He's just that guy. And me and you both, I mean, both of us have said from the day he was signed, he's a right back. He's not going to be a long-term centre back. And I'm writing a piece on our centre backs right now that will be released tomorrow about how you you need to find that ability to find dual monsters across your back line. You can't just have it in the middle too, because you need that ability to block off crosses. You need that ability to shut down wingers. And one of the things we both said was a bit of a weakness with Ben was meeting runners out wide. He's not presented that at all this season.
Yeah.
Zaha got locked. Son got locked, and who do they have? Cucurella got locked. These guys are just getting locked, and he's one of our most improved players, along with Xhaka this year.
Look, I think for me, what I really loved was Scott Parker's analysis kind of, during the game and, kind of pre-match. He was just
Mhm.
really highlighting how difficult it is to play. And, I remember us talking about the Bournemouth review, and, I said, Scott Parker did an excellent job, in terms of his game plan. It's just he didn't have the players to really execute it. But, he was full of praise, talking about how Arsenal really were just, so difficult to play against, just because of the fact that it's impossible to guess how the team is going to adjust in different scenarios. And I hope that you can see through all the screenshots that we talked about today how we've managed to go from, at one point, a 2-3 with Zinchenko being in the middle of the park. And then, in the first phase, having Aaron Ramsdale on the ball, who had a very underrated performance yesterday, by the way. Like, he gets a lot of sticks sometimes for those on the ball displays, but he was joining as one of the center backs in the back four.
He was playing through the lines. He wasn't hoofing. He wasn't going. He
Yes.
wasn't even doing the clip balls. He was playing through the lines. His ability to find Zinchenko consistently. His ability to find Partey consistently
Well, yeah,
along the floor.
exactly.
These aren't things because you're bypassing the press. You're
Yes.
literally playing line breaking passes from your goalkeeper.
And I
That's
think
not normal.
And I think, look, Zinchenko deserves a lot of praise for coming back after the injury.
Mhm.
But, Zinchenko doesn't get found the way and how often he does if Ramsdale isn't having this good of a game on the ball. Like, I'm
Yeah, for sure.
very consistent because, look, he positioned himself really smart outside of his cover shadows, right? Like, we talked about this kind of in the previous screenshot in terms of where Zinchenko is, right? He finds himself really nice high and wide. He's scanning, he's looking back, he's making sure to give himself an option. But look, this is all Aaron Ramsdale. If Aaron Ramsdale isn't able to successfully execute this pass, he's 1v1 with the keeper, right? Like, this isn't an easy pass. I know it looks easy, but it's really was the bedrock to us really exerting dominance. And of course, from the front, when you've got players that are able to go 1v1 in the press like this for the entirety of 90 minutes, then it's excellent. And you don't really give an opportunity for Chelsea to go through the middle, which is what they wanted to do.
No.
Them with their injuries meant that they had 0 people out wide to really exploit. And so what they were going to do if they had any joy was basically finding anybody on the inside. And the few times that, they did was we forced Mendy to go long with his clip balls out wide. Or if, Kai Havertz was able to receive after a really good piece of play, kind of they were able to kind of go in behind Zinchenko, and then Gabriel kind of Magalhaes has to defend that large space.
But that
And that's
happened like
why for me,
twice.
well, when he did this, and guys, this is again, it was in the 30 minutes, which you can kind of see from the
Yeah.
field tilt. But when they do find space out wide, which is what Chelsea wanted to do all game, it's because Zinchenko, of course, being in the middle of the park, he gives more space for Gabriel to defend, right? Like, Ben White is there to help William Saliba on the right hand side, and there is a little bit of less space, but there's a lot placed on Gabriel to make sure that he's a strong channel defender.
Yeah.
And I think when you have a look at it and you look at our center backs, right? They're just immense channel defenders. The both of them in open spaces and wide areas, they just dominate their 1v1s. And the fact that they're 24 and 21 years of age, respectively, and they're able to do it is immense. I'm gonna talk about William Saliba. I'm Saliba's season formally, and for me, this was a landmark performance, right? And when you have a look at it, William Saliba was taking the mick. He was putting people offside, and Armando Broja, when he was coming on, he was playing the offside trap and then still catching him when the play was going on and then dominating play. Like, I thought that was a brilliant piece of play. Combine that with the kind of the right back kind of piece of play that you see later on in the second half, and then you start to add what he was able to do in possession. Once again, I'm going to have a real quick look at the build-up structure. I know I'm a nerd, but like his ability to really find Thomas Partey and Zinchenko so consistently in the middle of the park, it really set us up for success in this game. And if we were gonna have a good time, we would had to get in behind this box midfield that Graham Potter wanted to do. And a big part of that was William Saliba able to find people on the inside quick, early, and to make sure that we broke at pace. Because when we do that, Chelsea weren't able to defend well, especially in that back line. And the only way that we were going to be able to do that was if their distances were big. And so it's a combination of factors, right? Like Jesus is running, keeps the defensive line deep. Saliba finding Thomas Partey, who has the skill to find Martin Odegaard in behind that box of Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Jorginho, means you've got Jesus, Xhaka, Odegaard, and Saka in a 5v4. Without them running, because again, Mason Mount, look at the amount of ground Mason Mount has to cover. And this was a big theme kind of throughout the 90, where they really relied on Mason Mount to make up the difference, because Jorginho was really struggling athletically. I still don't understand why they didn't put maybe Kovacic was injured still, which we did mention in the preview. But again, I think Conor Gallagher had to be in this game because they lacked huge legs in the middle of the park. They lacked huge off the ball presence. There was zero intensity. And I think if they just had somebody man mark Thomas Partey, they would have had a lot better success than having this loose box of Jorginho, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Sterling, and Mount. And Sterling and Mount aren't the most intense pressers. I think Mount's a little bit better, but certainly not Sterling. And especially when you have a front two of Oba and Havertz, like it was poor. I think Graham Potter deserves a lot of criticism tactically. It was awful. But Curran, mate, for you, how about like an underrated performer kind of the 90? Like, who do you think, somebody that we maybe haven't highlighted that you felt needed an extra bit of praise?
I mean, we did talk about Odegaard. I think he had a good game, but that's Xhaka. I think Xhaka was decent. I think Xhaka did very well this game. I think his ability to assist with the counter press and his ability to press on Ruben that is something that you needed in this game. And Xhaka, obviously, I don't think he was as attacking as we've seen them in some games this year, but in these big games, you need your big players to step up, and his ability to counter press and really win the ball back and be basically sound in possession, like that chance we showed where the Jesus miss, his ability to carry the ball from his own half to basically the byline by the edge of the D is it's an incredible carry. It's what, a 50-yard carry, and then he just pops it off to Martinelli, who comes inside and then crosses. But he goes from from one pillar to the next, and just an immense season he's having. And you can say it's Jesus your player of the season. For me, it's still Xhaka. I think his ability to lead from the front. The interview after the game as well was hilarious. He didn't realize either that he was on stream, was on live TV, and he dropped a little F-bomb, but it was, you can see he's back. And obviously we've mentioned Gabriel Saliba, obviously Gabriel with the goal. I was the one doing on the screenshots today. I didn't really feel the need to do the Saka goal. With Gabriel, it's a set piece, and
I think one thing that I did want to talk about is I'm glad that you picked Granit Xhaka, because he was going to be my underrated pick, just really quickly. Because look, I don't know if you guys noticed, but you guys remember that Cucurella has kind of just sat there. If you see a different angle, Granit Xhaka's holding Cucurella.
Yeah.
And Cucurella isn't just standing there for no reason, but he's holding.
He's not just hugging him; he's trying to get past.
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
can't.
and Granit Xhaka's doing that, and then of course the Granit Xhaka. I think what describes him the best is that little flurry at the end, kind of in the corner flag. He
Yeah,
knows what he's doing. He could see that the game state they were kind of picking up a bit, and he takes it out beautifully by riling them up. He knows exactly what they're doing, and how nice is it as a fan to sit there and say Granit Xhaka isn't going to be booked for unnecessary reasons. Like he's going to
I
go
think
in.
one of my favorite mutuals said it on Twitter. He's a Sancho stan. What's that? He said basically Arsenal are just done now. They're going to win the league. You can't even get Xhaka triggered anymore. It's not that's not even a thing anymore. You can't rattle him. He's just not going to do it anymore. How are you meant to beat this team if you can't even get Xhaka sent off? And it's just like, well, this is how it is now. We're a team that I feel like this team. I think the best way you can sum up this performance is a mature performance from an immature team. I think that's the best way you can sum it up. The tactical fouls, the ability to control the game, the ability to not let up for 90 minutes, from the first whistle to the last, there was never a chance. They didn't let go of anything. We've had this narrative of, if you get through the first 30 minutes, you can get at Arsenal because it's a different game after 30 minutes because they kind of let off the pressure, and we have at times. But this was just complete and utter dominance. We didn't let up. We didn't let them in with a sniff or any sort of shout of the game. It was just 90 minutes of sheer domination, complete and utter. There was nothing they could do, and they didn't have any ideas. I don't think they have any ideas off the bench. Kovacic came on, Gallagher came on, Broha came on. Broha did a dribble. Okay, cool. I didn't one shot on target the entire game. It was just like I don't really know what you want me to say. What was it 2.2 to 0.9 xg or something like that? Like
It's poor, and you know what
it's
I think,
poor.
and I think what a good place to kind of end the pod is kind of what this means for Arsenal, just really quick in terms of course, the title race and everything, because we haven't
Yes,
talked about that. We're now so we're just one game left before the big break with the World Cup,
we're
right?
a third through the season.
We are a third through the season. It is now 13 games in, 34 points. And then when you have a look at the table, it makes for really great reading, right? Because, of course, look, we go ahead of Manchester City, which is our point.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a look at some of the top four challengers, both Newcastle and Tottenham, who have games in hand, we are 8 points ahead of Tottenham
Mm-hmm.
with a game in hand. And, of course, we are 7 points ahead of Newcastle, who's in third with a game in hand yet again. And so when you start to look at it, then Manchester United at like the next challenging spot, we're 11 points ahead. Guys, these are huge metrics. And when I have a look at it just historically, we are on pace, okay, for a 99-point season now. I did my famous tweet, looking at the Boxing Day table last week, and it was a 98-point pace, and now with this next win, it's a 99-point pace, and it's incredible when you have a look at it. And it's not just this season, but it's been going back as far as Boxing Day of 2020. We are the second best team in the league, just factually now, and it's been going back since then. And I think we have to look at it as a bookmark. I must be honest with you. I think we had a debate last time on the pod here in terms of what is a title race and when. I still say it's March within 7 points. That for me is kind of when I'll really pick up pace. But I think what we have to do is we have to go into the World Cup with definitely being on top. I think we make sure that Julian Lopetegui is not going to be a snitch. He is going to be tough. He won't let us have that at the beginning, right? Like that's a tough last game, even though the Wolves are kind of second last on the table. He is a good manager. I do like that. But in terms of us going into it, I think this was a really landmark performance. You could see how much it meant to Mikel. And of course, you could see how much it meant to the players, both with the whole narrative of the Aubameyang, it being nothing personal. It just added a level to the game that I just think it took away from the Chelsea sales. And it just gave Arsenal, I think it almost secured us in the top four at this point. We've said here at BoP between August and now, you would be able to clinch top four. And I didn't think we would do it with this expertise and this, level of
Neither of us did. Neither of us
um,
did.
no,
Neither did Chris.
no, there was nobody that could have predicted us being
No,
this consistent.
we all thought we were third. I think third would have been, you
I
know,
still think we all thought it would be a soft challenge, but like you said, we thought it would be third. And what we did think was just top four minimum. We've basically secured top four, just factually. And historically, there's only been one team. Newcastle's the only team and they had to give up over 8 points, by the way, in that title race, 95, 96. So um, I think the biggest thing for me is when you have a look at this, it's excellent to see, but there is a bookmark to the season. There is definitely a bookmark to being able to say you're top before this and then top kind of after the World Cup. We have a really tough 5 fixtures to start the break. We need to get through, but then after that, we have a very good, favorable run of fixtures up until April, where we've got a really spooky kind of Newcastle away, and I think a Chelsea actually, ironically, kind of performance as well that are in back-to-back games. So for me, when you have a look at it, we've done all the right things to get us up top at this point. I think we need to close kind of the last game really strong, make sure that we're top. But everybody that's looking towards a title kind of challenge and what to do in January, I think we need to reevaluate kind of some of the injuries that we have coming back. Emil Smith Rowe, Mohamed El Neni back. We kind of told you over here on BoP that they would be back, with their pre-injuries. And so you got to have a look at what's available. Mikel made a note of this kind of in a press conference as well. And so he kind of made a note of what to expect, right? And so I think for me, the biggest thing is just to keep focused on the next game, and then we'll take it as we go, kind of in January. So, what do you make kind of it, Curran, really quickly?
Firstly, this is my thing anyway. I love Wilf. So if we can get him, great. But we'll do transfers in other times. But I think closing remarks about this title. I think we're in a title challenge. I think historically, there's no way you can say we're not. I think there's just no way I can sit here and be like, no, this is going to be a top 4 team. We have to just no. We're in a title race every week. We're looking at City's results. We're not looking at Spurs results. We're not looking at United results. We're looking at City results. Like for me, that's mad. I feel like what are we doing? We're competing with Erling Haaland. This is not a thing I was expecting. But look, the main thing is we take it game by game. We look at how we can do. I mean, firstly, up the Chelsea next week. Come on, we gave you a battering, but you can do us a favor next week. Get that 3 points. Broho, you've got this, bro. This is it. You can help us out next weekend. But yeah, look, it was an interesting game in terms of how you can look at this team and say this is a team that exudes control. There's a togetherness about this team. This team has yet to introduce those 3 brilliant letters ESR into this team. This is a great team to look forward to, and this is one of my favorite teams in a long time. In a long time, I enjoy watching this team. I enjoy the players in this team, and I'm just enjoying the moment. And I think that's the best way to talk about it. Enjoy the moment. I think we'll come third. I think we can still come second or first, whatever. But enjoy the moment, enjoy the games, and just enjoy the ride. There's not really too much to deep right now.
People
And
forget. People
yeah,
forget Emil Smith Rowe, our top goal scorer of 8 months of last season, and this entire team. It's the press. I keep talking about it. The press is the MVP, and when you talk about the team embodying the manager, it really comes down to that press. And I think that's been the MVP, and it has to be the MVP in the second half of the season. And so, really, for me, the biggest thing is when you add kind of that dynamism pedal. Like if we do have an opportunity where we're facing kind of low blocks or mid blocks and we struggle to up the tempo, Emil Smith Rowe is one of the best accelerators in
yeah.
possession in the squad. And we do miss him drastically, not just his ball striking and his ability to finish, by the way. When you're talking about clinical players, he's one of our most clinical players. And people forget that he was our top goal scorer for 8 months. And that wasn't fluke. And so when you start to think, okay, you can add this to the team as well, you can add a different dimension. When you have Kieran Tierney,
Yeah.
by the way, as a fullback pairing with Emil Smith Rowe, that's the change that can happen instead of an Eddie Nketiah. Eddie can force being up top. He doesn't have to be left wing. Like these are slight changes that I think the team is
But
able
not
to
just
do.
that, though. Not just that. The dynamics that opens it is endless. You can have the left wing option. You can finally try that Fabio Vieira, Emil Smith Rowe, right centre mid, right wing combination that could work quite well because Emil overlaps from right centre mid. I just think that there's so many. Obviously, the left wing that you've mentioned, the creative inside midfielder. I'll answer this in a second, please. That creative inside midfielder that can come play at left wing to allow Kieran to overlap and provide those crosses. But yeah, their possibilities are endless, and obviously we've still got January to come. I think we should get a seasoned, someone that can just plug in short term and offer us just sheer output. I think output is the one thing I think we could improve on, and for me, it's Wilf Zaha. I know you're a bit different to me, but in terms of
Well, no,
Arteta,
I said since the summer, like if you wanted a title challenging short term. I recommended Zaha, but for me, I don't want a short term philosophy. Like for me, I'm very dead set
I
on
know what you
making
want.
sure I'm very dead sure on making sure that we buy value here. And but Mikel made the point also, Curran. I talk about Zaha and he would make a difference, but we'll definitely have a pod to talk about January transfers. But Mikel made the point with the position that we're in right now, it demands another level of player, and that player has to be available. And so when you have a look at everything and you see what you can do, it's not a cop out what he says. It's for me, it's very critical that the next step this team has to make is those
We don't
marquee
need we don't need someone that will just keep. We need someone that will raise
raise
the
the level.
level of play.
Yes. And we need another personality. We need somebody else in attack. I don't want another project, but for me, Zaha isn't a project. He's a short-term solution, but he's somebody that you will have to replace in 2 years.
The one thing I will say before we do go into this Arteta question is the one thing that I feel like we need is just that ability for inevitable goals. That's the one thing that kind of could derail our title challenge. I feel like we just need goals right now. And what will Zaha bring but goals? His ball striking, his ability to play across the front three. I think those are incredible tangibles that you need in this
Look,
team right now.
he offers incredible tangibles, but one thing I will say is like attitude. Why he won't operate in the press, and he won't do those things. He'll operate very differently. He'll hold up the ball a lot more. We'll have a better outlet in that sense. Will Zaha himself, he'll have better ball striking in that instance. He has more variety inside dribbling, but he won't compete in the press in the same way that Martinelli has. And that's been our MVP. And I keep saying that to people. Like, you have to look at what has made yourself a success this season and buy to that philosophy. And it's not just buying goals, but buying somebody that's going to contribute to that philosophy off the ball, because that's what's made you successful this season. He might be a better goal scorer, but he has to be a better goal scorer that works. He has to be a better goal scorer that's willing to sit on the bench at times, because we do have a
That
competitive.
will be up to Mikel. If Mikel can do it, then he will. Then that's a perfect signing. But if he can't do it, if he sits down with him and he's not convinced, then it's not something that can go. But if there's
No,
an ability just to say, look, you have to buy in, and we can win you a Premier League title. There's an opportunity there to say, look, there's the motivation. Go and work for this now. Go and provide that sort of output that we need.
I think that it is a very big bet, and it's on somebody that historically hasn't done that in the past. And you would be looking at somebody that you would hope could change, that hasn't shown to change in the past. And you would be looking at playing to his strengths if you had to. Again, I was the one that recommended him in the summer for a very short term title challenge. But I said, with that statement, I don't want to do it if it's in the context of a longer term solution. And I think that there's a big opportunity in the summer
Neither do I.
for versatile attackers. And I guarantee you, if you do a Zaha in January, you're not getting an attacker in the summer. So it's kind of a case of making sure, like Mikel has said, and I'm going to repeat the quote because I think it's very key. And I've been saying it for a while. This stage of the project, guys, it requires steps towards marquees. All right, we all know this. And I've kept saying that January represents an incredibly tough window availability wise. It's made worse from a post World Cup fallout. There's a lot of shiny new toy syndrome that is going to be driving fan expectations. But remember,
I've said I don't think we do anything. I know you think we might, but I don't think we
no,
actually do
I'm
anything.
convinced we do something because
I'm not. I'm
we
just not.
absolutely need something. And I think that we not only is it that we do something, it's going to be something small. Like I've said, defensive depth or a free pre-contract like a Yuri Tielemans that we would look at. Evan
We can't do a
Ndicka,
pre-contract. He's in the
um,
same league.
well, not him specifically. I'm just saying. Well, you can after January, by the way. It's just not in the January window that you can't do domestics. But you could work on him and you could secure him for free. You could do Evan Ndicka. Okay, you could do these things, but I just don't see us spending major cash, and I wouldn't want us to because that's a short-term solution. And when you have a look at it, we can talk about the big marquees in terms of what we do. Everybody knows who my subjective guy is, and that's been like that for a while.
For new listeners, he wants Sambi sold to leverage Liao from AC Milan in a swap deal, and then we both want Rice. I don't want Rafa. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think that's a deal that we do, but I think because I don't see swap deals working out. But if I love Rafa, so
Look,
we'll see.
I've done my job convincing Arsenal Twitter on the Leao Rice window, and I'm not going to stop at that point. But
You
look,
convinced me on one.
look, these are marquees. When you have look, Trossard on a free. I think that's an excellent deal. I've talked about McAllister, and when I talked about him, he got a new contract. So I'm afraid to keep suggesting it because clearly Tony
I mean,
Bloom is on my
this
case.
is the difference,
Um,
right? I mentioned it, and I got like 60 quotes on my head to getting cooked. He mentioned it, and he got, oh, okay, oh, interesting, very nice. Yeah, that's very cool.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't think of it like that. That was yeah.
It's the Gordon Ramsay, and it's flirting versus harassment. And what it comes down to is just people like me. They like my face. I'm a Canadian. I'm just too polite. But look, guys, we are gonna have a transfer pod. You guys seem to love it.
Wow.
I know that you guys keep talking about it. Don't worry, just bear with us. There's another 2 games that we got to focus on. Our eyes are gonna be midweek. Okay.
When is Brighton, by the way? Is it Wednesday or Thursday? I think
I
it's
believe
Wednesday, right?
it's Wednesday.
Then we're back tomorrow. Fun
Exactly.
times.
We are going to be back tomorrow for the preview, guys, because as we said, Wednesday is going to be the Brighton game. So we'll be
I was
back
planning to
tomorrow.
write tomorrow. Oh, this is gonna be fun.
We'll, we'll be back
Yeah,
tomorrow with a good preview. But guys, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. If you guys are here, before you guys head out, please hit the like. It does a lot for the channel. So thank you
it
so
really
much.
does, guys. It helps with the
Um,
sharing of like the video everywhere, and it like I was doing some reading on it actually. Apparently, it helps with the algorithm push your video out. So if you can do it, it really does help. So do it.
Absolutely. And if you can hit that bell for notifications to know when we do upload, we're going to be back with you guys tomorrow for a preview. So make sure you guys are here for that. And of course, you can find all the socials. I'm at George V underscore AFC, Curran at Curran BOP, and Chris at CKFTBL. We are Ball Over Passion at YouTube or at BOP Footy on Twitter. So, guys, we hope you enjoyed this a little bit of transfer fun talk for you guys at the end. But also, we hope you guys enjoyed the tactical breakdown of Chelsea. And, guys, we just keep plugging away. Okay. So we got Brighton, but then Wolves last kind of game before the World Cup. So I hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow for the preview of Arsenal versus Brighton. So peace, everybody. Have a good one.